big news nights. So, because then you can just walk through the wall like a superhero. You just walk right through and you sit down.
Something like that. You know what, though? How can they say it's manufactured? How do you say that to the 5-year-old son of this officer in California? How do you say that to the mother and father of the wonderful people that lost their 22-year-old son in Knoxville, Tennessee? Yeah. How do you tell them this is a manufactured crisis, or the many deaths from heroin overdoses in this country?
Yeah, Hannity, you're absolutely right. We're covering every angle of this tonight, and I think we learned a lot about the Democrats' priorities after tonight's so-called rebuttal, and we're going to get into all of it. Fantastic show tonight.
Thank you so much. All right, thanks.
All right, I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle. Of course, another busy Washington night. The president making his case from the Oval Office for border security and that wall on this very historic night.
America proudly welcomes millions of lawful immigrants who enrich our society and contribute to our nation. But all Americans are hurt by uncontrolled illegal migration. My administration has presented Congress with a detailed proposal to secure the border and stop the criminal gangs, drug smugglers, and human traffickers. Cutting-edge technology for detecting drugs, weapons, illegal contraband, and many other things. We have requested more agents, immigration judges, and bed space to process the sharp rise in unlawful migration. Finally, as part of an overall approach to border security, law enforcement professionals have requested $5.7 billion for a physical barrier. At the request of Democrats, it will be a steel barrier rather than a concrete wall. Senator Chuck Schumer, who you will be hearing from later tonight, has repeatedly supported a physical barrier in the past, along with many other Democrats. They changed their mind only after I was elected president. The federal government remains shut down for one reason, and one reason only, because Democrats will not fund border security. This is a choice between right and wrong, justice and injustice. This is about whether we fulfill our sacred duty to the American citizens we serve. When I took the oath of office, I swore to protect our country, and that is what I will always do. So help me God.
We're going to explore some critical questions tonight. So did the president make his case adequately to you, the American people? Did Democrats offer a rebuttal that was coherent and persuasive? Or are they more about scoring political points than keeping their constituents safe, the American people? And what do the folks on the front lines of combating illegal immigration have to say about all of this back and forth going on in Washington? We're going to get to all of that. We have an unbelievable series of panels tonight, plus some important cultural and free speech debates you are not going to want to miss. But first, who are the real shutdown opportunists? That's the focus of tonight's angle. All right, however you received the president's address tonight, one thing should not be missed. The president scored a major media coup. And what am I talking about? He got all the major networks to carry his address, galvanizing the attention of the entire country. And he accomplished something else. He got two of the least popular politicians in the nation to respond to him on his terms.
He wants to raise the stakes and make the Democrats the co-owners of this shutdown. And I think Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are walking right into the trap. He brings everyone in, and this is the Trump trap. He negotiates through brinksmanship, and that's just not a way to get to a rational ending.
Okay, but this is rational?
The president is rejecting these bipartisan bills, which would reopen government, over his obsession with forcing American taxpayers to waste billions of dollars on an expensive and ineffective wall.
We don't govern by temper tantrum. President Trump has appealed to fear, not facts, division, not unity. There's an obvious solution. Separate the shutdown from arguments over border security.
Okay, now, the contrast should be glaring for anyone who watched tonight. The president was really sober in his address. He was extremely serious. And he genuinely believes that a wall is needed as part of a larger border security policy. That's what he campaigned on. That's what he won on. Democrats do not give a damn about securing the border. For them, this is all about scoring political points. And, of course, about 2020.
We have always been willing to talk to the president about border security, and many of us have supported some pretty massive investments in border security in the past. But we can't do that while the government is shut down.
We need to open up government and then negotiate, not the other way around.
We believe in secure borders, but we want the government open.
Once the government is open, I would support looking at a broader compromise on immigration.
All right. Don't believe anything they're telling you there for just not even a millisecond. The Democrats are targeting the 800,000 government workers on furlough. They're targeting them. What do I mean? They refuse to move even a millimeter, the Democrats, toward a common-sense compromise with the president. Now, remember, a year ago, they were willing to give him $25 billion for a wall. Schumer ultimately pulled that off the table. But they were willing to do that. Now, today, they can't even come up with a measly $5 billion. Think of all the waste, fraud, and abuse in this town that they could trim away to get that $5 billion. We'll talk about that in a bit. The president has shown a willingness to compromise. You heard it tonight. In a funding request to the Senate Appropriations Committee this week, the president asked for items that are also important to Democrats. He alluded to this tonight. Of course, $800 million for humanitarian needs at the border, and that includes medical support and additional facilities to house migrants, which, frankly, a lot of Americans probably think would be better spent on inner city youth and our veterans. But nevertheless, the president's willing to go there. The president's also requesting $675 million for new technology to detect and stop the flow of illegal drugs over the border. Democrats have long said they wanted that. But Democrats don't want to have an honest conversation about border security. They are now the party of obstruction, and everything must bend to their resist Trump goals. The Hill reports that their latest strategy is to jam up the Senate by refusing to consider any legislation until the government is reopened.
This cannot be business as usual, that we shut down a quarter of the government and just leave it shut down. It's an incompetent strategy.
Now, just to give you a sense of how dogmatic, how rabid, and how fanatical this resistance to Trump has become, look no further than the Democrats who voted against considering a bill to support Israel earlier today. What? So we're not going to support oppose boycotts against Israel because Trump wants to do a deal on the border wall? How is that governing in a mature way? Now, I'm sure the new anti-Semitic wing of the Democratic Party was thrilled about this development in the Senate, but nevertheless, most Americans aren't. Again, don't focus on what they say. It sounds fine, kind of reasonable. Watch what they do. The Democrats want this shutdown to go on as long as possible to divide as many Republicans from the president as they can. They want to peel one off after another. And then they want to ratchet up the political pressure. Our safety and our security? Forget that. That's damned. If they wanted the government reopened, the Democrats could negotiate with the president and reopen the government tomorrow. He's already compromised on the structure of the wall, and he's dropped his asking price, as we know, way down. And while the Democrats feign concern over spending a few billion on the border wall, $5.7 billion, the coastal wonder twins of their party, Governor Newsom of California and Mayor de Blasio of New York, have all kinds of money. They find pots of money for the health care of illegal immigrants.
We will never waver in our pursuit of guaranteed health care for all Californians.
Health care is a human right. In this city, we're going to make that a reality. In this city, we're taking that ideal and putting it into practice. From this moment on in New York City, everyone is guaranteed the right to health care.
Well, they have no problem finding all that money falling from the sky to spend on the well-being and health of illegal aliens. My friends, like everything else, this is all about politics for the Democrats. Pretty much every demographic group in the country right now is better off than they were just a few years ago. Think about that. But the Democrats, they don't have any answer to that. It's not like they're going to go out there and argue, okay, we're going to offer these 3 policies, and they're going to raise your standard of living to a higher level than President Trump has been able to do. No, they've given up on that. All they have to run on is this shutdown and their opposition to the wall. Oh, sorry, and Trump's a racist. That's all they have. Oh, and for an added bonus, they actually believe that this stalemate with the shutdown furnishes them with another political weapon to, guess what, further the real nirvana for Americans, because this is really going to help your life get better, the impeachment agenda. Yes, Trump's threat to end the shutdown by declaring a national emergency, which never happened, and building the wall himself, could hasten the Democrats' ultimate desired end.
This kind of abuse of power may also open up other measures for Congress, because this, in fact, could hit the tripwire of abuse of power, which is also one of those things that could lead to a presidential impeachment.
I heard that this morning. I was like, wow, you're really spinning it out. Well, while the Democrats are straining to squeeze the last bit of political juice from the shutdown, the president's doing the right thing. He's focused on the security and the sovereignty of the American people and their prosperity. It's a posture that's good policy, but in time, it's also going to prove to be good politics as well. Mark my words. And that's the angle. All right, joining us now to react, an all-star panel, Matt Schlapp, chairman of the American Conservative Union, Byron York, chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner, Fox News contributor, and Chris Hahn, former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer, and Victor Davis Hanson, a senior fellow at the Hoover Institute. Matt, let's start with you. Did the president do what he had to do to convince the American people tonight?
This was a very basic, clear message. It did not need to be long. He hit all the major points. He talked about the true victims of illegal immigration. And this is checkers, not chess. Everyone in the press was goading him. You have to put it all out there tonight. He's going to take this over several steps. It's no longer just about the funding bill. It's about what the president will do with his executive power in the weeks and months to come.
Victor Davis Hanson, the Democrats tonight on all the other cables and the response by Chuck and Nancy, basically, it's like, oh, it's not a real crisis. This is a manufactured crisis. I hit this in the angle last night. We're ahead of the curve on that one. But if it's a 45-year low at the border, Victor, then why is it a crisis? That's the Democrats' point.
Well, they don't point out that it's not year one. It's where we have anywhere from 11 to 20 million people here illegally already, and we're the most generous country in the world as far as immigration per se. 60 million people almost. The greatest percentage we've ever had, 15% of the population. So 400,000 may not seem as great as it used to be, a million, but it's still an enormous number given the pool we had. And, you know, Trump was very wise not to fall into that immigration trap that Reagan fell into a third of a century ago, when he gave up amnesty and he gave up border security on the promise that he would get a wall or some security, and he never got it, and illegal immigration skyrocketed. The problem, Laura, is not that the Democrats are worried the wall doesn't work. Historically, we know it does. It works in Eastern Europe, Kuwait, Nancy Pelosi's, Barack Obama. I have a wall I built myself with a friend. It works. It stopped entry into my home. But the problem is it works too well. And believe me, if electronic surveillance and drones work better than a wall, then the Democrats would be saying that they were both technologically cruel or racist or inadequate or improper.
Well, no, they're saying
so the problem
now.
is the wall works, and if the wall,
right. So you agree, though, that
the wall works, and they know that.
Sorry, you agree that
they don't
the
want
Democrats want a shutdown.
They don't want an end to the changing demography.
I mean, I'm making a counterpoint. The Democrats want this shutdown to go on. The shutdown they have made a political calculation that the shutdown is good for them. It's good for them. They want it to continue.
Yeah.
If they wanted to end the shutdown, Chris Hahn, they could end the shutdown tomorrow. They could move a little bit toward President Trump. They haven't moved 1 millimeter in the last 2 weeks, not a millimeter. They couldn't even send high-level people to meet with the Vice President of the United States. He was up on Capitol Hill tonight talking to these people. Yeah. They disrespected him, didn't even meet with him with high-level people. That shows me they want this shutdown to go on as long as possible.
why bother meeting with the vice president? The vice president offered them a deal in December. The House and the Senate voted unanimously for that deal. And then the president changed his mind. So why would anybody meet with the vice president? It's a complete waste of time. You've got to meet with the president, which they'll do tomorrow. And they will open the government if the president allows a continuing resolution that passed unanimously in the Senate. And then they agree to talk about border security. That doesn't necessarily have to be a wall, from what I heard from the president tonight. But the president's speech tonight indicates to me that the president knows he's losing and that the Senate Republicans said, you better get out there and try to rally the troops. And I don't think he did a good job. He basically did the same message he did during the campaign. He did the same message he did during the campaign. It didn't work then. And quite frankly, if it was a crisis, he'd spend the $1.6 billion he already appropriated. He hasn't spent it yet because there is no crisis. Or they're just incompetent in Homeland Security.
Why do all these Democrats, including Pelosi around her beautiful Napa vineyard, why do they all have barriers? Why don't they leave their front door open every night and let whoever wants to come in hang out for as long as they want? Live there, take the food, maybe some medicine. Why don't we all just open the doors? This is just such a canard. They know walls work. Victor Davis Hansen's exactly right.
There's a big difference between a 1,000-mile wall and a wall around your house.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between 1,000 miles of wall and a wall around your house.
People.
You need state.
Yeah.
Laura,
none of them will leave their door open. Why?
Look, if
they
you
don't
could
want
watch
certain people
your
coming
wall, how many people are going to have to be stationed on that wall to make sure people aren't using ropes and ladders to get over it? That's the big question we should be asking right now, right?
He said he'll do drones and other things that Dick Durbin wants.
Yeah, by the way, it's not just the wall. He actually has a comprehensive strategy, including what the Democrats want.
We got to get to Byron on this. Byron's done the reporting on this. Byron, look, it is a tricky deal. Some of the polling we'll put up on the screen as we talk. It's a plurality believe that I think put up the plurality graphic, guys, from I think it's the Morning Consult poll that came out late today. Can I see it? Well, I can't read it, but it's a little hard to read. But it's a plurality of 42%, I believe that the wall should be built, or 44%.
The big job tonight was to convince the American people that there really is a crisis. The president says there's a crisis. The Democrats say no, there's not. The reason the administration says it's a crisis is not because the number of total people coming across the border has risen. It is actually down from what it was a number of years ago. But they say the type of people coming across has changed. The flow has changed. In the past, you were talking about individual adults, mostly men, who could be caught and quickly returned to Mexico. Now, they say 2/3 of the flow is families and unaccompanied children. They cannot be returned. They come into the United States, and the law makes it impossible to
Hey, Chris, I have an idea. Sponsor a family. Everyone who wants to have open borders should literally have to personally guarantee. I mean, I believe in bringing people in and adopting children. I think we can all adopt more children. We should open up adoption of children all over the world.
Laura,
I'm in favor of that.
But
you're all big with other people's money. It's always OPM.
I think that's a great sentiment, but when we're talking about a crisis at the border and we're talking about women and children, that kind of defeats what the president is saying. No, the president's saying drugs and crime and terrorists and all things that aren't coming.
It's a crisis. Well, we've established it's a crisis.
Can we just say one?
Hallelujah.
How about one thing? That two children did die at the border. We've heard a lot about this from Democrats. I actually think that's a tragedy, too. That's because we don't.
One at a time.
No, it's because there are people rushing the border every day. Byron's right on the reporting, and we don't have the judges, we don't have the facilities, we don't have the infrastructure to handle
Victor Davis Hansen, the situation that we have now is a dysfunctional government. We talk about a government shutdown. I've said this, I'm going to say it every night. We have a government shutdown to the will of the people on this. A plurality believes it's a crisis, 42%. I think 83% of the Republicans supporting the president's agenda here. We have, a much smaller number of Democrats. We get that. But every country has a sovereign right to determine who comes in and who doesn't come in on a permanent basis. Yeah. The Democrats want to throw that all out the window. Why? Why do they want to do it? You're writing about this in a piece tomorrow.
What I resented most about the response was the downplaying of these tragic stories. I'm here at ground zero of illegal immigration, Laura. 15 miles away from me, 3 weeks ago, Gustavo Garcia, who was an illegal alien who was in jail, was let out by the Tulare County Sheriff. He was not allowed to contact ICE. In the next 24 hours, he killed 3 people, 2 of them who were Hispanics. He had been deported 2 times, and then he ran people off the road and he shot, and he put 7 other people in the hospital. So to say that that's not a common occurrence is just absurd. It's not for people who of a particular echelon, who live in Malibu or in Napa or in Washington or a Tony neighborhood of San Francisco, and they have protection and armed guards and walls. But for people in the San Joaquin Valley who are at ground zero of all different ethnic backgrounds and nationalities, it's a real worry. And that's why people are getting so angry, because it's become a class thing where the elites say you're amoral and you're immoral, and we don't truck with that, and yet they're never responsible for the consequences of their own ideology. It always falls on somebody else.
All right, I want to play a soundbite, and Chris, you can react.
Or redeemable.
Yeah, I want to play a soundbite from tonight from the president. We'll play more from Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer as well. But let's listen to what the president said specifically about the morality of a wall.
Some have suggested a barrier is immoral. Then why do wealthy politicians build walls, fences, and gates around their homes? They don't build walls because they hate the people on the outside, but because they love the people on the inside. The only thing that is immoral is the politicians to do nothing and continue to allow more innocent people to be so horribly victimized.
Chris Hahn, what's unreasonable, dogmatic, or just imprudent about what the president just said?
Well, what he just said is a conservative talking point that didn't work during the election and isn't working now.
That's not responding. Why is that wrong or imprudent? Like, you can call it a conservative talking about. That's fine. Good on you. But let's talk about what about that is untrue or rabid or out of control or whatever it is the people on the left want to say about this president, because they have no logical argument. But I really am serious about that.
Laura, he's comparing a home with a 2,000-mile border on the southern border. Now, there are parts of that border, Laura, where everybody agrees you should have some fencing or border or some barrier there, but not the entire 2,000 miles. And if the president
he didn't say the entire 2,000 miles. He's never said the entire. Byron, you report on it. When has he ever said the entire 2,000 miles?
I remember doing an article last year saying 7 times during the campaign in which President or candidate Trump said you did not need a wall on the entire 2,000-mile border. He said at the time about half of the border.
And a big door.
Really
and a big door.
Correct.
So 1,000
now we're really
miles.
talking about 700 miles.
1,000 miles through a desert. 1,000 miles through a desert, which would be much better controlled by a drone
405 miles
than a wall.
of pedestrian fencing, 300 miles of vehicle fencing. There already exists some fencing. The vehicle fencing, by the way, is something people can walk right through.
They walk right around.
So there actually is fencing.
But look,
no word on whether it is immoral.
And it works where it is. Walls work.
Let's look at the visuals. I want to look at the visuals tonight. We're in TV, so we're people in TV. We're all superficial. So
this is pretty stark.
So,
hard
but
to
just
compete with the Oval Office.
Visuals. Okay, visuals. The president. The way he looked. Do we have just a full screen of the president? The way he looked tonight on the Oval Office. Okay, there he is. Hi, President Trump. Okay, now we had the Democrat rebuttal. Let's see what they look like.
It looks like liberal Gothic.
Your mother and I are very angry with you.
Well, okay, they don't look happy. That's fine. But, that's a horrible meme. That was, the meme was on Twitter, which we're not going to show, the Twitter meme. Isn't that so rude? They've done the same thing to Trump, by the way, in other ways. Okay, and then there was one other. Oh, there it is. It's awful. You people are terrible. But then was it Raymond Arroyo who came up with another one when they showed up and they kind of walked out in the long hall? Oh, no, that's terrible. That's ridiculous. They don't look Chuck Schumer doesn't look anything like that. But look, it's tough to do these rebuttals, Chris. Honestly, Republicans have tried to do it. Remember when Bob McDonnell tried to do the rebuttal to President, was it
Marco
Obama?
Rubio grabbing his water bottle.
Marco Rubio. It's brutal. So I'm just having fun. I'm having fun because it's not easy to do it. But I think visually it's always a little bit tough. All right, panel, thank you so much.
It's hard. It's hard.
It's not easy, but it actually would be easy to strike a compromise on the border. We could do it. We could all sit around, even with Han, we could sit around, and a couple of beers maybe would figure it all out, right, Chris? Come on, you would do it. You know you would.
Give me DACA. I'll give you more border security.
I think the president is willing to talk a lot of things, including DACA. But thank you so much, guys. Great conversation. And for months, we've been asking Democratic representatives whose paychecks come from your tax dollars to come on here and explain their opposition to this increase of border security, or the way the president's framing this. Even tonight, by the way, as the president addressed the nation, I don't know how many we called. We called like 3 dozen, 4 dozen. Not one congressional Democrat that we spoke with agreed to sit down right here in the studio and explain why they disagree with the president. That is a shame. We welcome all points of view, and Democrats on the show every night. We ask them to come on in good faith, have a good conversation, maybe even get somewhere. But for some reason, they just don't want to talk about this issue. This impacts all Americans, all across the country, not just ones that live near the border.
America's heart broke the day after Christmas when a young police officer in California was savagely murdered in cold blood by an illegal alien who just came across the border. An Air Force veteran was raped, murdered, and beaten to death with a hammer by an illegal alien with a long criminal history. In Georgia, an illegal alien was recently charged with murder for killing, beheading, and dismembering his neighbor. How much more American blood must we shed before Congress does its job?
So we wanted to take you outside of Washington, D.C., away from the partisan bickering, to the folks on the front lines of this fight. Joining me now, Brandon Judd. He's the president of the National Border Patrol Council. Every day he sees firsthand just how bad this crisis on the border is, and he even met with President Trump just last week about it. And Erwin Carmichael is the former sheriff of Mecklenburg County in North Carolina. Now, he was defeated after he supported a program that allowed his police department to cooperate with ICE and the detainers that are placed on illegal immigrants. And Dr. Jerry Mazin, last year, his son was shot dead by an illegal alien who made it back into the country despite being previously deported. Thank you all for being here. Brandon, you would think that if Democrats felt that they had the upper hand in this debate, they wouldn't be afraid, right, to step in, sit, I don't bite, we'll sit down, have a conversation. They don't want to discuss the specifics. They don't want to discuss the case of Erwin's family and so many other families across the country that have been devastated by illegal immigration. They just hide behind the cliches of, oh, we're a country of immigrants. That's about it for them.
Well, again, what they're not doing is they're not proposing a plan. What President Trump has done is he has clearly laid out a plan that is going to give us border security. If we go back and we look at what President Trump said, I believe that the New York Times was fact-checking him in real time. The New York Times found nothing wrong with what he said. They did not say that he lied about anything. But now let's compare what Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi said. They said that border barriers don't work. That's false. I can personally tell you that border barriers do in fact work. I've worked on the border, pre-barriers, post-barriers, and illegal immigration has dropped exponentially when we've had them. They say that the American people do not want border barriers. That's not necessarily true. It depends upon what poll you're looking at. Then they say that they're for border security. If that was a fact, why aren't they laying out a plan and telling us exactly what they want? Instead, it's the President of the United States that is laying out the plan, and the plan is sound.
Now, it's very specific, and I'm going to still call you Sheriff. I know you were defeated, but I'm still calling you Sheriff. What happened in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina? People don't think of North Carolina as a place where, wow, there's a legal immigrant problem, but the fact is, it's a problem all over the country now, even in more rural parts of the country where, we've gone beyond just the traditional labor jobs in the field. What happened there to thwart the rule of law with this 287G policy of cooperating with federal officials on immigration, Sheriff?
Well, the 287G program, this program is strictly, it's a federal database that we use to identify exactly who we have in our jail and who is in our community. And the top 4 crimes in our county through the 287G program, number 1 is DWI. DWI. Second one is assault on a female. Third one is trafficking heroin. Look how many folks who die a day just from the heroin. And then we have indecent liberties with a child. That's the top 4 in Mecklenburg County. Because we have this 287G program, these folks are removed from the country. They're removed from our communities. But now this program no longer exists in our county. They're going to be released right back out in the communities to reoffend.
And they've said 28 have already been released, correct?
Yes, 28 have been released back out into the community.
How is Mecklenburg electing a sheriff like this, McFadden, right? Is that his name? He was going to come on last night, or no, he said he wouldn't come on because someone at a .com, Fox, they said, misquoted him about something totally different. It was a complete canard. They will not come on to answer legitimate questions that Americans want answered about why they're not protecting the American people. They won't come on. Democrats won't come on from Capitol Hill. Local officials are afraid. They're all hiding from their own constituents. Jeffrey, I had the pleasure of meeting you when we did our show from the border in June. Pleasure and heartbreak, sharing your story, the pain of your son losing his life to an illegal immigrant. I want to play for you, there's a picture of your beautiful boy. I want to play for you a soundbite from tonight. This is over at MSNBC. Chris Hayes, who was reacting to the president bringing up the issue of illegal immigrant crime. Let's watch.
There's genuinely horrific things that have happened, but to conflate them with the 12 million people living here is a kind of incitement that's pretty ugly.
Your reaction to that, that's tantamount to incitement, he said.
I'm just wondering how many of these people have had their sons, daughters, wives, or husbands' life snuffed out by one of these illegal aliens, these monstrous people, these human beings that prey on another human being. I'm just wondering if they would talk the same line if they saw their son bleeding dead in the street or their daughter raped to death. I'm just wondering if Nancy Pelosi had one of her children or grandchildren assaulted in the same way that my son was assassinated, if she would speak the same way. I just wonder about that, Laura.
The president raised that issue, of course, tonight, and he personalized it and said it's easy to kind of, flick it off when it's not your family. John King over at CNN, he said basically, and Brandon, I'll have you react to this. He said, well, look, he cited this study that you can quibble with, but immigrants on a whole commit less crime than American citizens. Again, the John Lott study on that, just focusing, I think, on Arizona, I think exploded that. But they conflate legal immigrants and illegal immigrants. Brandon, you heard the pain from Jeffrey and his family. How do you respond to this tonight? Because Democrats are saying it's a 45-year low at the border. We have fewer crossings, not a crisis, big deal, not a big deal.
Well, it was a 45-year low in 2017. I've personally had to go to funerals of Border Patrol agents that have been killed by illegal immigrants. I've seen it. I know it. But one thing that I wish the American public understood is I've met with the president on multiple occasions. I've had multiple conversations with him. And what I know personally is that what he is trying to do is he is trying to protect the American people. He cares about the American people. And because he does care about them, he is trying to secure the border. Why don't the Democrats want to do the same thing? I'm baffled by that, and frankly, it upsets me because I'm the one that's out there trying to patrol the border, trying to protect the American public, and I'm not being given the support that I need, mainly by the Democrats.
Sheriff, how does this issue, you saw it play out tonight on national TV. The president gives his address, very specific, very frank. Democrats respond. How does it play out in local communities like yours?
It's our program, the 287G. All we look for is the criminal element. You had to be arrested, charged with a crime, and brought to our jail before you would ever encounter it. And these folks that are killing folks, we will pay for them for the rest of their lives. DWI being the #1 crime in this county. And the gentleman, Officer Singh from California, 2 DWIs by the suspect prior to. He should have been removed from the country. And right here in Charlotte, we had a gentleman who was arrested for marijuana, and then he was not deported. He stayed here. He killed 4 people, one of them being the American Top Model contestant. He will never leave this country. We will pay for him for the rest of our lives and his life. So there's a lot of bad folks that are here in the communities. And again, we want to make sure the community is safe. Yeah. We want to make sure that they are removed when they commit crimes.
All right,
I'm all for a pathway to citizenship.
Yeah, Dr. Mason, I want to get your last word really quickly. Should the president relent and compromise on this wall?
Absolutely, 100% not. He should stay focused and adamant because his principles, as the gentleman said, are sound.
Now, and solid. And delivered dispassionately. Gentlemen, thank you so much tonight. Important conversation. A lot more coming up. Toxic masculinity.
I wanted more from my COPD medicine. That's why I've got the power of 1, 2, 3 medicines in Trilogy. The only FDA-approved